All right. Our speaker today is Adrian Gemberling, who is the Susquehanna Technical Coordinator at the Chesapeake Conservancy, an environmental nonprofit based in Annapolis. Adrian serves as the key on-the-ground coordinator for the Chesapeake Conservancy's high-resolution mapping project in central Pennsylvania, working with local conservation organizations to get more tree plantings along our streams in key locations. She is a graduate of Lebanon Valley College with a degree in biology and has a master's degree in biology from the University of Missouri. With a focus, Missouri State University, with a focus on freshwater ecology. She is a native of Mifflinburg and in her spare time enjoys hiking, fishing, and kayaking in central Pennsylvania. Please welcome Adrian Gemberling.
All right, thank you, Mary. Can you guys all hear me? All right, thanks for having me to talk to you a little bit today. I'm gonna sort of highlight a little bit of my work with the Chesapeake Conservancy here to start with, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of the historic water quality issues surrounding the Chesapeake Bay and what's sort of happening locally here in central Pennsylvania related to the entire bay cleanup and how we're integrating technology into all of that work. So as Mary said, the Chesapeake Conservancy is an environmental nonprofit. We're based in Annapolis, Maryland, and we have a staff of approximately 30 people at this point working on sort of conservation issues. And there are three main activities that we have here that we work on. Those are connecting residents of the Chesapeake Bay Watershed to the natural resources and history of the bay. We do large landscape conservation, and that's mostly focused in Virginia and Maryland. For places that have high ecological importance or historic value. And then we also work alongside restoration professionals, specifically in Pennsylvania, to help implement best management practices, which I'll talk a little bit about here in a couple minutes, to improve water quality. And what's different about the Conservancy from a lot of other conservation organizations is that our work really focuses on using the latest mapping technology to inform where conservation can have the biggest impact for water quality. So really maximizing the benefits per investment of actually doing restoration. And so like I said, today's talk, I'm gonna start with sort of an overview of water quality in the United States since about the 1940s. We'll talk about the Chesapeake Bay specifically and how we've been making big gains here and where some of our future improvements could come from. I'm gonna set the stage by talking about a local water quality project that I've been working on in 4 counties in central Pennsylvania to do tree plantings. And then we'll also sort of weave in how technology is actually helping us to pick the project sites where we can have the biggest impact. And all of this is going to focus on these tree plantings along streams called forest riparian buffers. This is something that the state as a whole has identified as a way that we can make sort of a lot of progress by focusing our work in specific areas. And so I'm gonna set the stage here by taking a step back. I've got some photos up here across the United States from the 1940s to about the late 1960s. The top 2 photos on the left are actually from Cleveland, Ohio. How many of you have heard of the Cuyahoga River fire? Kind of an iconic event, or I guess I shouldn't say a single event. The Cuyahoga River actually caught fire 13 times by the late 1960s. There was so much industrial pollution entering the river from factories in Cleveland that when trains would cross the railroad tracks, the sparks would light the river on fire. And so the last fire occurred in 1969. There are actually no pictures of that fire that have been documented. This picture was actually appeared in the New York Times. It's from one of the earlier fires in 1950, but they tried to fudge that a little bit and say it was the latest one. But this is really the event that got people thinking about the quality of our waterways across the United States. And it was what sort of led to the formation of the National Environmental Policy Act, which led to the formation of the Environmental Protection Agency that came in 1970, and then the Clean Water Act in 1972. So this was sort of an event that really kind of catalyzed water quality improvements. I have a few other photos up here. Bottom left, we're looking at what are we looking at? That's Lake Erie in the mid-1950s. And then we have some photos from the Chesapeake Bay Watershed. Bottom photo on the right is actually Baltimore's Inner Harbor. You can see all of the tires there. And then the top photo on that side is actually looking at the Chesapeake Bay. This is a fish kill. So Menhaden are it's actually the biggest economy for fish production in the United States. They're really tiny fish that are used in a lot of things like essential oils and that type of stuff. But you can see a Menhaden kill. So we made a lot of progress. Our rivers and streams don't look like this anymore. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got from this stage to where we are today, and then how can we, take this even further to further make our streams, fishable, drinkable, and swimmable. The Chesapeake Bay Agreement, I mentioned a few pieces of legislation that helped the formation of the EPA. We talked about the Clean Water Act that stated we wanted to make our waterways fishable and swimmable. The Chesapeake Bay Agreement was signed in 1983, the first version of this. It's gone through several iterations since then. And we now have buy-in from all 6 Chesapeake Bay states, plus the District of Columbia. And this first version really sort of set the stage that said these states were committed to cleaning up not only the health of the Chesapeake Bay, but in order to do that, they had to clean up their local waterways as well. The Chesapeake Bay Agreement really led to the formation of what we know now as the Bay Program. And that's what kind of drives all of the funding for everything related to the Chesapeake Bay. So most of the programs we have up here in Pennsylvania is sort of federal pass-through money that comes to the state and then is distributed out at the local level. So all of that has ties back to federal legislation and the formation of the Chesapeake Bay Agreement. The agreement actually has 10 different interrelated goals. It's not all about just water quality. It's about improving fisheries, promoting clean water to all residents of the bay, addressing climate change, looking at how we can conserve more land to help prevent healthier ecosystems, not just on the water, but also on the land, and then engaging communities in conversations about restoration and how we can clean up local waterways as well as the bay. So I have a few photos here of the Chesapeake Bay Watershed. I already told you it encompasses portions of 6 different states as well as DC, but you can kind of get just a perspective here from looking at these different photographs. The Chesapeake Bay Watershed is huge. It covers 64,000 square miles. It's got over 18 million people living in the watershed, and it has the 2nd largest land-to-water ratio of any water body in the world. So how we're using the land in the Bay watershed is really impacting the water quality of all of our streams down to the bay. What else do I want to say here? The Susquehanna is the largest tributary to the bay. It drains almost half of the landmass of Pennsylvania, and it contributes half of the daily freshwater input to the Chesapeake Bay. So in order to clean up the bay, a lot of eyes are focused on Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the farthest behind of all of the bay states in meeting water quality goals. But that comes with such a big landmass that is draining from Pennsylvania. I mean, you have half of the land here, or half of the freshwater input, but we are providing about